Johnny Depp was once the very definition of a Hollywood heartthrob. With chiseled features, soulful eyes, and a brooding charm that made him irresistible, Depp captured the hearts of audiences around the globe. But as the years unfolded, the world would witness a striking transformation, one that peeled back the glamorous layers of celebrity and exposed a man burdened by fame, heartbreak, and personal demons. Today, Johnny Depp is no longer just the beautiful rebel of the 90s. He is a haunted artist, one who has endured public trials, emotional collapse, and a painful rebirth under the blinding scrutiny of the spotlight. His story begins in the unassuming town of Owensboro, Kentucky, where Depp was born in 1963. As a child, he experienced instability and emotional hardship. His parents' volatile relationship, multiple moves, and early encounters with drug use left deep scars. By the time he entered the entertainment world, Depp was no stranger to emotional chaos. He burst into fame with 21 Jump Street, becoming a teenage idol almost overnight. But rather than basking in the superficial glow of stardom, Depp famously despised the label of teen heartthrob. He yearned for depth, complexity, and rebellion. His escape came through film, and more specifically, through characters who reflected his fractured inner world. In the early 1990s, Depp began a string of collaborations with director Tim Burton that would redefine his image. No longer the clean-cut poster boy, Depp embraced roles like Edward Scissorhands, Ichabod Crane, and Sweeney Todd, lonely, eccentric figures wrestling with identity and trauma. These characters weren't chosen at random. Depp gravitated toward misfits and outsiders because he saw himself in them. Behind every quirky performance was a layer of personal pain, a need to disappear into someone else, even if only for a while. His partnership with Burton became a refuge and a reflection, offering both creative liberation and emotional catharsis. But even as he soared artistically, Depp's personal life began to unravel in the public eye. His passionate and tumultuous relationships, first with Winona Ryder, then Kate Moss, and later Vanessa Paradis, captivated tabloids. With Winona, the romance was iconic, branded permanently on his skin with the infamous "Winona Forever" tattoo. When it ended, he changed it to "Wino Forever," a decision that would foreshadow his descent into alcohol-fueled sorrow. His love life was intense and unstable, a mirror of his childhood, marked by both deep devotion and self-destruction. By the time Pirates of the Caribbean hit theaters in 2003, Depp had become a household name again, this time as the eccentric and wildly beloved Jack Sparrow. The role brought him mainstream adoration and millions of dollars, but also a new kind of typecasting. To audiences, he was the flamboyant pirate. But inside, Depp was losing his grip. He once admitted that Jack Sparrow felt like a split personality, and over time, it became difficult to separate the character from the man. He leaned into the role both on and off screen, occasionally mimicking Sparrow's speech patterns in real life. The lines between performance and reality began to blur as the years went on, cracks in Depp's facade widened. He faced financial turmoil, lawsuits against former managers, and shocking claims of mismanagement that left his once vast fortune dwindling. Then came the most damaging chapter of all, his relationship with actress Amber Heard. What began as a whirlwind romance quickly turned into one of the most public and brutal legal sagas in modern celebrity history. Accusations of domestic abuse were leveled by both parties, with headlines painting Depp as a violent abuser and then, alternately, as a falsely accused victim. For years, the public war played out in courtrooms and on social media, tarnishing his reputation and dividing fans. During the peak of the scandal, Depp became a pariah in Hollywood. Studios distanced themselves. He was dropped from major franchises, including Fantastic Beasts, with Warner Brothers citing reputational damage. For a time, it seemed his career was over. But behind the scenes, Depp clung to the one thing that had always offered solace: his art. He poured himself into music, touring with his band Hollywood Vampires, and began painting portraits of people he admired, from Bob Dylan to Heath Ledger. His artwork, raw and vibrant, revealed another layer of the man, someone still yearning to be understood, still craving connection beyond the chaos. The trial against Amber Heard in 2022 became a turning point. Broadcast globally, it was both spectacle and reckoning. Depp's testimony revealed a broken man, one who had lost faith in the justice system, in love, and even in himself. But it also ignited a massive wave of public sympathy. Social media swung wildly in his favor. Hashtags like Justice for Johnny Depp trended for months. For many, he was no longer just an actor, they saw him as a survivor. The trial, however polarizing, reignited interest in his story and brought renewed scrutiny to the price of fame. Following the trial, Depp retreated to Europe, seeking peace in cities like Paris and London. He began taking on smaller, more artistic roles, like King Louis XV in Jean de Barry, signaling a departure from big-budget blockbusters. His interviews became more introspective. He spoke of betrayal, of loneliness, and the pain of losing control over his narrative. Depp no longer seemed concerned with being loved or understood. Instead, he embraced his status as an outsider, a man molded by hardship and defiant in the face of destruction. Today, Johnny Depp is not the same man who charmed millions in the ECOH 1990s. The youthful sparkle in his eye has been replaced by something deeper, a mix of wisdom, sadness, and resilience. His face carries the weight of his journey, each wrinkle a reminder of what he has survived. He dresses in layers, both literally and metaphorically, shrouding himself in scarves, hats, jewelry, and mystery. His voice, once smooth and steady, now carries gravel and weariness. And yet, there is something profoundly compelling about this new version of Depp. He is no longer chasing fame. He's creating for himself, whether through canvas, guitar strings, or quietly chosen film roles. The transformation is not just physical or professional, it is spiritual. He has traded perfection for authenticity. The heartthrob is gone. What remains is an artist, haunted, yes, but also enduring. A man who has stared into the abyss and returned, battered but still standing. Johnny Depp's story is far from over. But whatever path he chooses next, it will be his own. He no longer fits neatly into the Hollywood mold. He has outgrown it, broken it, and reassembled the pieces into something uniquely him. That perhaps is the ultimate evolution, not into a legend, but into a human being. For decades, Johnny Depp was the embodiment of cinematic cool, a rare breed of actor who seemed to effortlessly blend commercial success with artistic credibility. But beneath the surface of stardom, there always lingered something more complex. He was never comfortable being boxed in, never willing to conform fully to Hollywood's expectations. Even at the height of his heartthrob status, when posters of him graced bedroom walls around the world and every major studio clamored for his attention, Depp gravitated toward the fringe. He chose roles that were eccentric, misunderstood, or tormented. Characters like Edward Scissorhands, Raoul Duke, and Ichabod Crane. These weren't the roles one might expect from a rising box office star, but they spoke to something within Depp that was more interested in storytelling than in stardom. As time passed, the pressure to remain that image, the unconventional sex symbol, the avant-garde A-lister, became increasingly difficult to sustain. The persona began to splinter. Fame took its toll, and so did a series of personal battles that played out in the public eye. Relationships unraveled. His financial situation became a topic of headlines. Lawsuits emerged. The most damaging, of course, came in the form of his legal war with Amber Heard, a relationship that not only imploded spectacularly, but dragged both of their private lives into a brutal and very public arena. What unfolded in the courtrooms and in the tabloids was more than a celebrity scandal. It was a cultural flashpoint. For some, Depp became a symbol of resistance against cancel culture. For others, a troubling figure whose past behavior couldn't be ignored. But for Depp himself, it appeared to mark a personal reckoning. He was forced to watch as Hollywood distanced itself from him. Studios cut ties, roles were lost. Once the face of Disney's billion-dollar Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, he was suddenly expendable. He was no longer the man that Hollywood could proudly market. He was a liability. And yet, through that fire, something within Depp began to emerge, stripped down, raw, and paradoxically, more real than ever. He started speaking not as a movie star, but as a man reflecting on the wreckage of fame. He leaned into his music, finding solace in the quiet of recording studios and the anonymity of touring with the Hollywood vampires. His artwork became more visible, a vibrant, chaotic expression of emotion on canvas. These were not publicity, stunts, or attempts at reinvention. They were lifelines, creative outlets that had always existed in the background, now pushed to the forefront. This period of reinvention didn't come with red carpets or glamorous premieres. It came with humility, with exile, with long stretches of silence and isolation that forced him to take a hard look at who he had become when the applause faded. And in that silence, Johnny Depp appeared to transform, not into a version of himself tailored to fit the times, but into someone who no longer cared to fit in at all. The haunted artist replaced the heartthrob. The smirking rebel gave way to a more subdued figure, aged, weary, but perhaps wiser. He now carries with him the visible wear of someone who has lived many lives in one. The lines on his face, the gravel in his voice, the deep-set eyes, all speak of a man who has seen too much, felt too deeply, and weathered storms few could comprehend. And yet, there's also a serenity there, a quiet strength. He no longer feels the need to explain himself or prove his worth. His art, whether in the form of a song, a painting, or an unfiltered interview, does the talking for him. He has reclaimed his narrative not by force, but by retreating from the spectacle and returning to the core of who he is. A storyteller, an artist, a deeply private man thrust for too long into the harshest spotlight. There's a poignancy in watching. Someone like Johnny Depp shed the skin of stardom. It reminds us that even icons are human, that behind the designer sunglasses and eccentric hats lies someone who feels the weight of loss, the sting of betrayal, and the deep need to rebuild. And rebuild he has. Not in the grand, triumphant way Hollywood prefers, with blockbuster comebacks and award show redemption arcs, but in a slower, more introspective fashion. He's chosen to surround himself with trusted friends, far from the limelight. He's invested in artistic projects that resonate with him personally, regardless of mass appeal. And perhaps most importantly, he's learned to be okay with being misunderstood. This version of Depp may never recapture the universal adoration he once commanded. But in many ways, that's irrelevant. What matters is that he's still creating, still exploring, still standing. The boyish charm has faded, replaced by a rugged, world-weary presence that speaks volumes without needing to say much at all. He's no longer the fantasy many projected onto him. He's something more grounded, more human, more authentic. In a world addicted to reinvention, Johnny Depp has done something rarer. He's embraced evolution. Not the kind that seeks applause, but the kind that allows a person to survive themselves. And so, as he moves forward into this next act of his life, whether he returns to major films or fades into the quieter corners of artistic expression, it's clear that the journey is now his alone to shape. Not dictated by agents or studio demands, not shaped by gossip columns or courtroom headlines, but guided by a deeply personal compass. That's not just survival, that's transformation. The kind that doesn't beg for recognition but simply demands to be lived.